Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome. Tonight we are doing, I guess I should call it the first of the insomnia streams. I've been having a lot of trouble sleeping and just decided maybe it's best to use that insomniac time to work, get some things done, maybe get ahead of the constant treadmill, right? That I feel like I'm on sometimes, if that makes sense. And also, we have been talking about covering other subjects, and I think that's a great idea, especially if it's something that I care about. And tonight, um, yeah, I definitely care about tonight because some things are going on, and I don't even know where to begin. James O'Keefe is, I think, a great muckraker, and let's get into what that is for those that uh, don't know. It is a journalist, a certain kind of journalist, and I am sure that James O'Keefe would be considered that. And but more so than that, uh, I think that we, I think that we here at Truth Seekers, yeah, we have definitely been called muckrakers. So James O'Keefe from Project Veritas has been recently ousted from his own organization, which he funded. And I apologize, a little distracted there for a moment. But before we get into what happened with him getting thrown out of his own organization, well, essentially thrown out, they sort of castrated him. They didn't throw him out completely, they just took away any power that he may have had to actually run the organization, such as the ability to hire or fire people. And we'll get into that. But I thought that we should begin tonight with just an explanation of muckraking, because muckraking journalism is one of my loves in life. And you can see in our show here. Um, we have at various times been called the muckraker of UFO land or conspiracy land because we do some hard hitting investigative journalist and we expose corruption and things like that. For those unaware, muckraking journalism is a type of investigative journalism that seeks to expose corruption, injustice, and wrongdoing in society. The term muckraking was coined by President Theodore Roosevelt all the way back in 1906. That's where the term muckraking journalism originated. And Theodore Roosevelt used it to describe the work of journalists who were raking up the muck of society. Muckraking journalism has a long and storied history in the United States, dating back to the late 19th century. Some of the most famous muckrakers of the era included Upton Sinclair, who wrote The Jungle. And The Jungle was an expose on all of the trouble and corruption in the meatpacking industry. Other notables include Ida Tarbell, who exposed the monopolistic practices of the Standard Oil Company. She exposed them as a monopoly, she investigated them, and told the world what she found. Now, the impact of muckraking journalism has been significant, and I think it's the most important part of journalism, because by exposing corruption and wrongdoing, so-called muckrakers have helped to bring about important societal and even political reforms. For example, the muckraking journalism of the early 20th century for sure played a key role in the passage of laws that regulated food and drug safety, labor practices, and even antitrust regulations. More recently, muckraking journalism has continued to play an important role in uncovering wrongdoing and exposing corruption. Investigative journalists have exposed corporate malfeasance, political corruption, human rights abuses, among other issues. Now, one of the key benefits of muckraking journalism is that it helps to hold those in power accountable. You know that saying, if you're going to speak truth to power, that comes from muckraking journalism, in my opinion, because muckraking journalists speak truth to power. They don't care how rich or how powerful someone is. They expose them for corruption and wrongdoing. Muckrakers help to ensure that those who would abuse their power are exposed and are held to account. And this certainly can help to prevent abuses of power and to promote transparency and accountability in society. Now, in addition to holding the powerful accountable, muckraking journalism also serves to inform the public. Many secret things have been uncovered by muckraking journalists, things that the rich, the powerful elite, the evildoers would rather never be known by the general public. By shining a light on corruption and wrongdoing, muckrakers help to ensure that those who would abuse their power are exposed and held to account. This helps prevent abuses of power and to promote transparency and accountability in all levels of society. In addition to holding the powerful accountable, muckraking journalism, as I said, it serves to inform the public. And it also educates the public about important issues and raises awareness about societal and political problems. And this can help mobilize public opinion and promote meaningful social changes. It has been proven to promote meaningful and social changes. Some have accused muckrakers of being sensationalist or biased in their reporting. Others have argued that the intense focus on scandal and wrongdoing can be harmful to public discourse and can erode trust in institutions. But I believe that if it can be proven that we should not trust our institutions, whatever they are, whether they be churches, religious, or political governments, local governments, state governments, federal governments, we should know these things. And I am a huge supporter of this type of investigative journalism. Despite these criticisms of this form of journalism, however, muckraking journalism remains an important and valuable form of investigative reporting. I truly believe that. By exposing corruption and wrongdoing, muckrakers help to promote transparency, accountability, and social justice in a society. In a world where the powerful often seek to evade scrutiny and to hide their evil misdeeds, muckrakers are there to level the playing field. Muckraking journalism serves as a vital check on power and provides a voice for the voiceless. So I'm a big supporter of muckraking journalism. And despite my mantra of not being very political, I, of course, have my own beliefs. However, I have not chosen a side, right? I believe that both the Republicans and the Democrats are criminals. And choosing a side, it doesn't really work for me. You know, it's two wings of the same bird to me. And despite what I think about James O'Keefe and his political beliefs or leanings, I have supported some of the work that he has done, much of the work that he has done in exposing things that we would never have known if not for him and his organization. So I always try to remember that some people watching may not be, informed or understand. In order to understand James being ousted, it's helpful, I think, to understand a little more about him and his history of him and his organization. So we're going to get into just a little bit of his history, and then we're going to go over this video. Oh, it's a doozy. They ousted him, and he essentially showed up at the office to get his stuff, and he gave a talk to the people, his staff, before he got his stuff, got his marbles and rolled out. He got his marbles and went home. But they really forced his hand. They forced him to do that. So James O'Keefe is certainly a controversial figure in the world of investigative journalism. He's known for his work with Project Veritas. O'Keefe and his team, Veritas, I'm sorry, I always mispronounce it. It's Veritas. James O'Keefe and his team at Project Veritas have gained attention for their use of undercover videos and sting operations to expose alleged wrongdoing by organizations and individuals. Veritas was founded by James O'Keefe in 2010, and Project Veritas describes itself as a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to, quote, investigating and exposing corruption, dishonesty, self-dealing, waste, fraud, and other misconduct in both public and private institutions, unquote. The organization has conducted numerous investigations into a wide range of topics, including voter fraud, media bias, and government corruption. However, O'Keefe and Project Veritas have faced criticism and controversy over their methods. Some have accused the organization, for example, of using deceptive and unethical tactics, such as selective editing of videos to create a misleading impression of events, or using false identities to gain access to private information. Critics have also accused Mr. O'Keefe of having a political agenda, which I think it's pretty clear that he's on the right side of the fence, right? I think that's a fair criticism. And some suggesting that his investigations are biased towards conservative causes and organizations. Of course they are. But despite the controversies surrounding O'Keefe and Project Veritas, his organization has had some incredibly notable successes in exposing wrongdoing. For example, in 2017, Project Veritas released a series of undercover videos that appeared to show CNN employees discussing how to manipulate news coverage for political purposes. The videos sparked a major controversy and has led to the resignation or firing of 3 CNN employees. In addition to CNN, Project Veritas has targeted a range of other organizations, including Planned Parenthood, Acorn, and the New York Times. You may remember that Planned Parenthood expose. He posed as a pimp with a hooker with him, went into Planned Parenthood, and then members of Planned Parenthood told them to lie, essentially, right, about their illegal activities, right? Amazing that a government organization is giving advice to a pimp and his hooker. But I thought that was an excellent piece. He's also gone after Acorn and the New York Times, and some of his investigations have resulted in legal action, with Project Veritas facing lawsuits over its tactics. However, to the best of my knowledge and recollection and research, James O'Keefe and Project Veritas have won every lawsuit ever, levied against them. And he has won several lawsuits against other organizations for things like slander or damaging his reputation or making false statements about him. Overall, James O'Keefe and Project Veritas represent a controversial and polarizing force in the world of investigative journalism. While his organization has been successful in uncovering wrongdoing, its methods and motivations are often called into question by their many critics. I believe that it remains a highly controversial organization, but I believe it is a very necessary organization, and I fully support them. I think that despite his political leanings, you can't. I don't think it's fair to. I got something on my shirt there. I don't think it's fair to criticize him for having political leanings when, literally he has proven that CNN manipulates the news to be favorable to their selected political party, which is the left. I considered what he did to be an equalizing force, right? And you can say, well, James O'Keefe, he's so right wing and, he's biased. Maybe there needed to be someone that was right wing and biased to do that sting on CNN and prove that they're left wing and biased. So in that sense, I consider James O'Keefe and Project Veritas to be an equalizing force. It's only fair, right? If we're going to have an entire multi-million or billion-dollar news industry purposefully skewing things to the betterment of their political affiliation, why shouldn't somebody on the other side of the fence go and prove they do that? And he sure did. So recently they try to toss him out. Now there's a lot of controversy about this, but essentially, from my research into the players involved here, it appears from an outsider's perspective looking in, and by the way, this is all just my opinion. You're free to form your own opinions. But it looks to me like some people within his organization were getting greedy, and they don't like him being the person in charge of the money, even though ask any donor to that organization. Who are they donating to? They're donating to James O'Keefe. So this organization's board members' decision to essentially castrate him and make him powerless within that organization, I think this is the worst idea that I've ever seen. In fact, there's memes going all over the internet of people saying Project Veritas and showing somebody shoot themselves in the foot. It's very clear that Project Veritas is now losing social media followers rapidly. Thousands and thousands of people a day are unfollowing Project Veritas because many people believe, as some people in the live chat, I heard Solar Marshall here in the live chat earlier, and he said there is no Project Veritas without James O'Keefe. It just doesn't. He is Project Veritas. And by the way, just to display how much people believe that James O'Keefe is Project Veritas, a well-known journalist recently tweeted, Project Veritas just committed suicide. And people actually replied and said, oh my God, James O'Keefe killed himself. That's how connected James O'Keefe is to the name Project Veritas. A well-known journalist tweeted, and he was essentially saying what I said, that Project Veritas shot themselves in the foot trying to get rid of their founder, James O'Keefe. But he said, Project Veritas just committed suicide. People in that thread read that and believed that James O'Keefe had committed suicide. They didn't understand the context of the tweet. He is the founder. He is the face. He is the primary fundraiser. And by the way, they have raised millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, all through his work, his passion. But now it would appear that the greedy board members decided that they can do better than the founder. They can do better than the face, the leader, all this time. And I have to say, from a human perspective, this story bothered me. Because imagine if you had just spent the last 13 years of your life working 80 hours a week, completely dedicated to that cause, and you built a multi-million-dollar organization. You created content that got millions, tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of views all around the world. When he put out this Pfizer story, this was reported on internationally. It went in Germany, in Japan, people were reporting what he showed. So imagine, from a human perspective, I felt bad for the guy. I got to be honest, despite whatever I think about his political beliefs, he created this organization. He created that garden, and he watered that garden every day. He tilled that garden. He worked that garden until it bore fruit, right? And then along comes some other members of his organization who decide they don't want him anymore. They don't need him anymore. They can do better without him. And by the way, there is internal emails of Project Veritas board members telling other people within the organization, if we get rid of James, you get a raise. So don't tell me this is not about people being greedy and money. They're literally bribing people to go along with the, if you want to call it a coup, they're bribing people to go along with this coup to get rid of this guy, telling them, if we get rid of him, you're going to get a raise. And again, from the research I've done, it looks like that this is all about money. These board members do not like, when you've got a guy who is like James O'Keefe, he's all about this mission. He's not going to let them misuse money and funds, right? The money goes to the mission. But some of these other board members have other ideas for those millions and millions of dollars. And they've decided, like I said, that they could do better without him. Now, I knew that he would do something. So James O'Keefe, he tweeted this on Twitter, and we're gonna go through this because there are some bombshells in here about what happened. And I got to commend the guy for having balls. So they tell him, you got to go away for 2 weeks. Don't have any communication with sponsors, you know, the people giving the money. Don't communicate with the office staff, you know, and you're stripped of all your power. Don't communicate with anybody. And he walked right into the office to get his stuff. He's going to take his marbles and roll home. But before he left, he decided that he would speak to the staff. And true to his nature, he filmed it and he posted it on Twitter. And I got to say, this is one of the best videos I've ever seen on Twitter. We're going to put up our fair use banner in a moment here. Let me put up our fair use banner. This is certainly a transformative work. We are educating the public about James O'Keefe being ousted at Project Veritas. Veritas! I always say it wrong. Yeah. So let me put my fair use banner up before we get into this. This is a transformative work. We're educating the public. We'll be critiquing and offering commentary about this video. And also, you can help me there in the live chat to make this a transformative work. Any comments that you want me to put on the screen while we're doing this will help me to make this a transformative work and make this allowable by law and okay to do on YouTube and everywhere else, because it will become fair use, because it will be a transformative work, not the original work. I appreciate the help. Any comments or questions, put them in all capital letters. That helps me identify that those are comments meant for me. 1 second now. Let me, where did it go? There we go. All right. We're going to go right from the beginning. And he was even kind enough to blur the one office worker that's seen in the video. I think that's a very fair thing.
All right. Thank you all for being here on a President's Day, but I think it's fitting that, you know, we're here on President's Day. So I wrote these so I could get the words right, you know, but it's obviously from the heart. And I wanted to do this in person with you all, not over a Zoom or Teams. And, you know, he's going to film it. And these are intended just for the family here at Project Veritas.
This is only intended for the family at Project Veritas, except for those 1.3 million followers that I have on Twitter that somebody leaked. By the way, somebody leaked this video, so then he posted it. At least that's what he said.
You know, this is just for us. I recognize that when you send something out to 60 people, but I'm not going to do that today. So I just wanted to tell you the truth. So I'm going to read this, and I'm going to try my best to, you know, speak from the heart. But I did write these words, and I want to tell you what's going on. So here we go. It's going to take me about 15 minutes to do this.
Yeah, they're going to fail horribly with that.
Journalism is reporting things powerful people want kept hidden for the wrong reasons, moral wrongs, bad behaviors. As journalists, we're the custodians of the public's conscience. And as we've gone deeper and deeper, exposing and illuminating corruption, the lies hidden from public view, the line that separates good and evil becomes more clear. institutions we investigate, but within one another. Throughout my 13 years doing this, our mission has evolved from simply being about exposing the truth with some hidden cameras to something more transcendental, giving people hope, right? That's what we do. And I'm going to stand here because I just feel...
I think it's interesting. One of the things I thought was interesting, that this guy is getting basically tossed out of his own organization that he has built for 13 years, right? And instead of just getting up there and being like nasty and bitter, he is like still talking about the ideals he founded this organization on. And I got to respect him for that. I'd be yelling and screaming, right? Like, good luck, you clowns, right? I'm leaving, and I'm taking all the donors with me. I don't think anybody's going to donate to them without him. This is going to backfire on them terribly.
Like I'm filming a video for the audience. And as we ascended into that higher purpose, which I think we all understand that we have suffered through triumph and disaster along the way in a similar fashion to what I wrote about in my book. You know, the first chapter was called Suffering. So the line that separates good and evil passes not through the states, nor classes, nor political parties, but right through every single human heart, to quote Solzhenitsyn. So that line in the sand becomes more clear the deeper we go in investigating these powerful institutions. So
I think it's great. You know what? He says later in this that he when this happened and they told him to stay away and get out, you know, he went hiking. And I got to tell you, I do that too, man. I got a cabin in the mountains. You trying to figure some things out? Go hiking. And it's great that he came back like with all this philosophical reflection on his last 13 years. Good for him.
Over the last few weeks, I have felt a lot of despair and seen a lot of evil, and felt overcome with various emotions over the last few weeks. You could say I've seen glimpses of heaven and hell.
Yeah, I wonder how long it took him to get all those knives out of his back, right?
Of darkness and light. But what I take away from these is the gratitude that I have for many of you, for most of you. And there's such
most
goodness
of you,
in so many,
except for the pricks throwing them out.
Have seen, and I am grateful for that, and the generosity and goodwill we have steadily built over the past 13 years with so many people. I've received thousands of text messages and phone calls from people all over the world concerned about my well-being.
Yeah, everybody's supporting him and vilifying these idiots that are throwing him out of his own organization.
But as I was going through this process, I reflected upon my appreciation for many of you. What makes us great is that we do this work because we actually believe in it, right? We actually believe in this. It shocks people that we do, and we have a passion for it, and we have principle. Like, I know, you know, we don't sell out. I think that's fair.
Well, we didn't used to sell out, but these pricks that were running this thing with me sold me out. So
at least most of us. We have a passion for doing the right thing in a visual way, no matter what. That's what binds us. I know many of you have experienced this despair alongside of me in the last couple of weeks. One of you just told me the other day that you'd go work at Walmart at the night shift so that you could do this during the day. That's what one of you said to me. I believe you.
Yeah, well, I got to say, I once worked for a nonprofit, and it was kind of refreshing that the people that worked for the nonprofit, of course, this Veritas is a nonprofit, the people who work there really believe in the cause. So they're willing to take less money and make sacrifices because they feel like they're working on, you know, towards something good every day. Oh, and by the way, thank you, Mr. Fish, for the kind and generous $1.49 super sticker. Did not see that. And also, thank you very much for being a member. We appreciate your kindness, your generosity, and support, and helping us to praise the cash.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Thank you very much for your kindness. And let me catch up with the live chat. I apologize. We read every single super chat and thank every single person. So we don't ever want to miss one. And if I, you know, sometimes I get a little wrapped up here. Yeah, and I agree. Solar Marshall says you watch. There will be major fallout from this departure. Well, after this video, if we get through it, I'm going to show you their social media before and after Solar Marshall. They're getting hammered. People are unfollowing them left and right. And anyway, James O'Keefe's followers across social media, Twitter and everything, have risen by several 100,000, I believe, and theirs has fallen by around the same number. So that's very interesting, right?
Rather than sell out. In fact, I know this is true for many of you and many more out there who wish to be part of this. It's true. I remember back in the beginning, 13 years ago, when I had like no money, I would have to use bubble gum, duct tape. I think you were around during that time. I keep looking at you because I've known you since Andrew Breitbart. And my grandmother's chinchilla, I literally had to place a Project Veritas sticker on a piece of cardboard that I ripped off from my dad's cardboard and stick it to a microphone at Radio Shack because I had no money to buy a flag mic. And
good for him. You know what? I kind of remember fondly those times. Like I started this podcast with a crappy microphone. It's a long story, but I had a recording studio, and then I had to pack up the recording studio to move, and all I had was I had a crappy microphone and a falling apart computer. That's what I started this show with. Thankfully, you know, through the generosity and support of people who believed in the work I was doing, we're doing much better now. And he certainly has come a long way since those early lean days.
this was after experiencing a meteoric high of the acorn story. I was up and I was down. And I was broke again. And I was arrested. And then crashed down to a meteoric low. Back in the carriage house, resorting once again to bubble gum and duct tape to achieve the NPR investigation that took us yet again to a meteoric high. I was so broke that I had to scribble my name and phone numbers on pieces of paper because I had no business cards.
That's something else. From that to a multi-million-dollar organization.
And so the saga continues. Back then, there were no employees and no budget. But I felt the same
Mark?
sensation this week. I feel the sensation right now. As Steve Jobs once wrote about.
Did you see their complaints against him? They accused him of stealing a sandwich from a pregnant woman, right? And I understand that this guy's probably a very difficult boss to work for because he's so driven and idealistic and passionate about what he's trying to accomplish, about the mission. But you're free to let me know why I got it wrong. Don't just tell me I got it wrong. And oh, you say this guy is a scam artist. Good riddance. Well, we'll agree to disagree. You don't think that he should have done what he did with Pfizer or CNN or Planned Parenthood? I thought those were good work. I thought those were good pieces, right? Regardless of the tactics, you may disagree with the tactics he used, right? And there is a great deal of controversy because essentially, lately, I think that what they've been doing is baiting people with dates, and then they send a fake date in to get the guy talking, the target. I understand it's a controversial method, but if it gets the truth out of those people, I support any and all things like that.
Being fired from Apple, the company he founded. Quote, the heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. Less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most.
This video looks like a Taliban hostage video.
So back then I trudged on. From the back of a stretch limo in DC, two guys, I was on federal probation, so I couldn't be there, but two of my volunteers dressed like Muslim Brotherhood fundamentalists armed with hidden cameras. Project Veritas was born again in 2011 for a second time. A couple of donors eventually became 100,000 donors present day, 13 years later. After almost a decade and a half of 85-hour work weeks.
Yeah, I mentioned that this guy works 80-hour work weeks. And by the way, I know somebody who worked there for a time, and they said that he lived in that office and he never stopped working. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I was told.
Sometimes traveling 300 days a year. I'm on the road, packing multiple meetings in a day. And plenty of blood, sweat, and tears, the likes of which I could never have possibly fathomed.
Yeah, that I haven't heard. Just email me that. Do you have evidence of that?
The external threats and pressure inflicted against myself and some of us has been unimaginable. I'm going to summarize them. handcuffed by the FBI on 2 separate occasions, 12 years
I don't
apart,
know if it was
having my
acting.
phones confiscated and private information leaked to the New York Times, being placed on effective house arrest for 3 years between May of 2010 and May of 2013, being sued dozens of times, being served 2 separate criminal grand jury subpoenas in New Hampshire.
You're going to blame me because I wasn't aware of that?
Getting
I have
pursued
the
in a
list,
high-speed chase by a New Jersey education
This
union
is why
official
we
on
don't-
Interstate 80 in Passaic, deposed many.
This is why we don't see. Look, just because you disagree with me on one issue of one story, but it's okay. I mean, do what you got to do, right? Now, if I was covering this and going after him and calling him a scammer, which I haven't seen evidence of, I think more people would jump ship. But, you know, this is the balancing act. Like, what am I supposed to do? You can't please all the people all the time. Sorry you're upset. You know, we could do a part 2 if I find that information and find it to be credible. But so far, all I've seen is a list of really ridiculous things that people have said, like he tried to steal a sandwich from pregnant people, or that he raised his voice at employees.
Times suffered through mediation with insurance companies where they had all of our emails. They had everything, but they evidently didn't have anything on me.
Yeah, I agree.
Getting my home raided by the FBI, having my loved ones put in handcuffs in the hallway, and having our office destroyed by a hurricane, literally a hurricane.
Yeah, I agree.
Which forced us into a temporary workplace before rebuilding and stirred up disgruntled employees, including grievances about me, which I will get to in a minute.
Yeah, he goes through the whole list of grievances.
Even so, as a former board member told me 10 years ago, Project Veritas will never be stopped from the outside. It will only be because we stopped ourselves, right? I'll get to that too in a minute. Prophetic as it may be, that is exactly where we find ourselves in the situation today. A situation where I've been stripped of my authority as CEO and removed from the board of directors. I bet you didn't know that. I'll get to that in a minute.
And, you know, I don't know if you've ever worked in an office where like somebody major got fired and then they had to explain it to you. That's very, very, I worked at some corporate cubicle land one time where the big boss got fired for trying to bang all the just out of college girls, and he was like 60, and he literally sexually harassed like 12 different women, and they had to get us all in this big room and like explain to us that he was gone and why he was leaving and why and try to like squash the rumors. They were telling us like we don't want to you don't want to spread false information, so it's best just not to talk about the allegations. And meanwhile, dude, I had like 10 of those 12 chicks tell me everything that guy tried to do to them. It was creepy. But this feels like that. Like, imagine everybody sitting there while he's like, they threw me out. You didn't know that, did you? This is terrible.
Contrary to what public statements may say. And by the way, I have copies for this. I will not give them to you yet. I will give them to you after I'm done.
Yeah, no, I'm a free speech guy.
Like
I said, I told him he could email me that
read as follows. Quote,
I'll share it on the
James
screen.
O'Keefe indefinitely suspended as CEO without compensation. February 10th.
Yeah,
yes. Quote,
they not only took away his power and his role as CEO, they took away his paycheck, his company credit card, and more. It's all right here, right? He redacted who was in favor and who was opposed, but it passed 3-2. Indefinite suspension of Mr. O'Keefe from the board pending the results of a 2-dimensional audit.
Indefinite suspension of James O'Keefe from the board, dated February 10th, 5 days before the statement saying that I'm still the CEO. I don't know why this is happening now.
Wow.
Or specifically why this is happening suddenly right now. As you know, at the helm of Veritas, I've never allowed or entertained speculation. I only report the facts. I think you know this. You're involved in hiring. But don't you know that so many people want to go beyond the facts? I'm adamant that I'm only going to stick to the facts.
Uh-oh. Yeah, and by the way, I just want to comment on what Mr. Fish said. We have a free speech zone here, and people are free to agree or disagree, as long as they do so respectfully. And I would have shared that information on my screen if he emailed it to me, and we could talk about that. But one might question, if he spent $14,000, but he was responsible for raising millions, is that really a fireable offense? Did they give him an opportunity to put that money back from his personal funds? Or, there's a lot. It's more complicated than just, oh, he's a scammer because he took some money that, and by the way, I haven't seen that information at all. So, but we would certainly share that and talk about it. And I hate that if somebody is that, I guess, black and white, that they're just going to go, this show host, I disagree with them, I'm unsubscribing. I'm sorry. I hate to see that kind of stuff. But we try to be fair here. We would do a part 2. Like if a whole bunch of information comes out that he was spending money that he shouldn't have or something, and they really had real cause. But I've seen some of the paperwork of what their complaints against him were, and I didn't see anything like that. Maybe I'm in error, and people often and are free to correct me, and we'll talk about it and share it. I'm not, my mind is not 100% made up. Yeah, sure, there may be some real good reasons, but I haven't seen them for why they're ousting him.
So much so that sometimes we don't hire people if they want to pontificate and opine about what's going on in society. And I've had people leave because they don't agree with this vision. Okay.
I just had somebody leave because they didn't agree with this show.
Fortunately, I have recordings and documents to back up everything I'm about to tell you. So everything I'm about to tell you, I have documentation and proof. So you don't have to say I wasn't there.
Yeah.
You can listen
to it.
Yeah,
I agree. Thank you, Hearthfire Adventures with Stone Hobbit. Good to see you here. And good to see Solar Marshall is back. He's back in action. So, yeah, he's got good attorneys. He really
I'm about
does.
a quarter of the way through here. Bear with me.
He said it was going to take 15 minutes.
For the last 13 years, I've been the same person I've always been, probably better than I used to be. These are adjectives some people use. Tough, hard-charging, driven, creative, exacting. I have extremely high standards and somewhat disorganized. I don't ask you how your Thanksgiving was, okay? Or the names of your siblings, although a good leader probably should. I don't do that. I ask a lot of you, but I don't ever ask you to do anything I haven't myself done and continue to do. I haven't always been the most compassionate leader, and that is admittedly a fault of mine, something I need to work on. But I remember when I was back in the carriage house in the beginning, there was a journalist in the beginning, and he pointed this out to me. So, you need to be more compassionate. Ask me about my life. And it hurt him that I wasn't more compassionate towards him. Personally, I told him it was difficult for me to change myself.
Yeah, and this is look, I'm not defending the guy being not very personable, but I'm sure everybody in the live chat, let me know what you think in the comments. Have you ever had a boss that was very impersonal with you and just didn't care? Do you know what I mean? Like, some bosses are just focused on work, and they don't. You notice how he said somebody wasn't happy because he didn't ask how their Thanksgiving was. He's focused on work. He doesn't care how your Thanksgiving was. You had the day off, right? Or whatever. Like, I've had a boss like that was just not sociable, or, some people just lack social skills. And you see that a lot with people. There's some people that are on the spectrum and they're undiagnosed. That guy might have Asperger's and just have social issues or whatever. I don't think him being impersonal with employees is grounds to fire him. That's just my opinion. And, I've also had bosses that were too personal or too sociable. They talked to me all the time and they asked me personal questions all the time, and that made me uncomfortable. So I guess you need like a certain scale, right? You should ask, I guess. And that reminds me, I don't really have employees, but Spooky helps here. I should probably ask Spooky more about what's going on with Spooky. That's a reminder to all of us. If you work with people, you probably should at least try to be a little, personal and sociable with them. because it's not all. It shouldn't always be just the work and the mission, and it sure is for me. It's spooky here, so.
But this experience stayed with me, and I always have known this about myself. I've tried to do a better job of that, but the truth is I've been very hurried, very busy, pressed for time every day, trying to pack in so much in a day. I think you all know this in meetings. I'm busy because I'm trying to get so much done in an hour, all the while moving at the speed of light to raise as much money, to hire more people, to take care of you guys in a fundamental way, although I may not be good at communicating the reasons why I am that way. I'm doing as much as I humanly possibly can so I could build this place out and do more.
No, this is interesting.
And that's what we did.
He shows the year's revenue. Look at this. Over the past decade, O'Keefe has grown the nonprofit's revenue by more than 200% and exposed malfeasance by organizations ranging from Acorn to Planned Parenthood to Pfizer, an impressive feat for a philosophy major from Rutgers. I didn't know that he went to Rutgers. That's interesting. 2020 revenue, $22 million. 2012, when he started, $730 million. I got to start a right-wing nonprofit. Look at that, $22 million. But good for him, you know. I mean, and listen, you know, I'm a firm believer that if people believe in your cause, they will help you. We're a perfect example of it. Now, I think I wouldn't know what to do if we collected that kind of money, even his starting money, like $700,000. But it's still, you know, look, we have supporters here from all over the world that throw a few bucks in our hat. We're on a tiny scale compared to him, but I say good for him. And look at how successful he has been at growing their revenue and growing their donors and their sponsors. I think they're going to have a real hard time without him.
Every year, each year since 2010, growing every year, sometimes doubling our revenue, doubling our impact. I have a chart here, which again, I'm going to hand to you.
Yeah, he doubled it from 2013 to 2014.
Every year.
He just about doubled it from
I have never
2016
slowed
to
down. I
2017.
recognize that perhaps I should, but number one, there's a trade-off to slowing down. And number two, I need the right leaders around me in order to do that. So along the way, there has been much turnover, replacing people with better people. This was painful to me and to many of you who witnessed it. But that has always been happening since day one. There was turnover 10 years ago when I had to fire a friend from college. Let's just maybe hold off on that until the end. So I'll make sure that everyone has a copy of this. And I don't intend to publish this. This is for you guys.
I bet you that's leaking out because he's giving it to like 40 people. Somebody's going to leak it if it isn't leaked already.
I had 10 years ago, I had to fire a friend from Rutgers. That hurt me. It took me months to get over this. I never discussed this. I felt for him, but it was the conflict that ate at me, but I had to do it. See, leadership has a price and results often come at a human cost. Maybe fewer in this world, present day, are willing to pay that price. Many people want the fruits of leadership, such as its power.
And its money, right?
Results, Twitter followings, secondary effects. But the price of the responsibilities, burdens, trials, hardships, difficult decisions, or just sheer suffering, I don't think people want that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that there was one time in my life when I worked in corporate cubicle land that I got put in charge of like 50 people. And I got to tell you, I wanted the paycheck, but I was not prepared at all for that role or responsibility. And I after a while, I thought I made the wrong decision taking this so-called, it didn't feel like a promotion to me because I don't know, maybe it was just the people working for me, and it was all people, everybody working for me was like 1 year out of college or something like that. Like this was their first real job. And it was a nightmare dealing with 50 people. That like just an absolute nightmare. Like all the sad stories, people calling out sick all the time, and you'd have to figure out how to cover for them, or I'd have to answer their phone for them all day, or like I just decided like I did not enjoy being a boss or a supervisor, because I can control whether I show up and do what I'm supposed to do and get my work done, but try controlling 50 people showing up and getting their work done. It was a nightmare. So, and that's the only experience, or that was the biggest experience that I have being a boss of people. And it was for a Fortune 500 huge company. And I will never do it again. Never. Well, I'll never say never. If the paycheck is big enough, maybe, but I don't think so. Yeah. I kind of understand what he's saying is like it's difficult to be in a leadership position. And then I don't know about him, but I experienced, like, even on that small scale, just 50 people I was in charge of, like, people hated me, because I would have to crack the whip. Like, what are you doing? You were like on the internet for 6 hours today and you didn't get your reports done. Like, and then I'm the bad guy. Like, I did not like being a boss. I don't know about him, but from what I've seen, he looked like he was a good leader because he's passionate and he really believes in the mission. I don't know.
And all through the years, things fundamentally continued on an upward trajectory for this place, albeit turnover. And I'm a hard guy to work for sometimes. We file our annual tax return.
Yeah, you want to talk about turnover. After a while of that job where I was people's bosses, by the way, I could make a decision to fire somebody, but I didn't physically fire them. Like, I didn't go tell them, you're fired, get out. Somebody else did that. They would like walk over somebody from human resources to go pull them in a conference room. And then I would clean out their desk and give them a box, But anyway, the turnover rate was so high that I felt like telling some of the people that got a job in my section, like, don't tell me your name because you might not be here next week, bro. And I don't want to waste the space. Give it a week. If you last a week or 2 weeks, I'll learn your name. But until then, apparently he's had some high turnover too. I can imagine that a lot of people think it would be this is going to be a great job working for this thing I saw on the internet, and then when they get into it, they don't do well or whatever. It's high turnover.
A public tax return is required by the IRS, and my compensation is set by an independent board of directors via a compensation committee. 4 times a year, our chief financial officer has submitted company financials to the board. That's every quarter, and our board approves it in quarterly meetings. All 3 members of the C3 were present. And we have subjected both the C3 and the C4 to audits from outside independent accounting agencies each and every year. That happens. That has always been happening.
Yeah. And by the way, do you hear how he just said that they submit to an audit? That's very important, because if he knows that there's outside auditors every year, I highly doubt that he is misusing funds, right? Because he knows somebody's going to catch that. So I don't know that I believe what that person said in a message earlier, that he's spending money that he shouldn't. It's going to show up in an audit. Oh, and thank you, Honeybee and Rusty, for kind and generous $4.49 Australian dollars. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show, and helping us to praise the cat.
Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash.
Yeah, way too many money reports. No, but the thing about audits is, if a company, if people, I fully support an audit. I have one once a year by my wife. She's an accountant. And by the way, it's tax time. So if I'm in a really bad mood for 2 weeks next month, it's going to be because I'm doing my taxes, and she's a stickler. Like, I got to make spreadsheets and shit. It's a nightmare. I can't imagine dealing with that kind of money and an audit. They track every penny. An external auditing accounting firm will check every dollar going in or out.
Nothing about how I've conducted myself over the past 13 years has really fundamentally changed until now. So what has changed in the last 3 weeks? What has changed? The only thing that has changed is that we broke the biggest story in our organization's history.
Yeah, I find it a little suspicious that right after they break the biggest story in the whole organization's history, the Pfizer story, suddenly they want to get rid of him.
You know that one I'm talking about? Pfizer.
Yeah.
The last week of January, with 50 million views. That like broke the record by like 10x. Our video became a global phenomenon. It was about Pfizer and one of the directors discussing mutating the virus. Our confrontation video, where he locked me in a pizza
Me
restaurant
too,
with you and you, and he smashed the equipment and called the police, that became a phenomenon and was riveting television for our audiences glued to their screens.
That was quite a big story. And by the way, did anybody else think it was really stupid for that guy to like? He was like trying to smash the tablet as if they didn't have another copy of the of the video that they were showing him.
Probably one of my favorite things that ever happened. It was just really unbelievable. It was like true to be false and seemingly too false to be true, but it was real. If someone else is here, you can let them in. Hello, come on in. Just giving a few remarks to the team here. So
no, they weren't recording illegally, to the best of my knowledge.
The only thing that changed were these videos. Outlets in India and China cover the story, and our social media exploded like never before. Our employees.
All right, we're going to take a moment because that's a very good question, Daniel Foster. So what's going on is O'Keefe retiring, ousted. So journalists were recording illegally. Is that what Veritas was? That's illegal in California, recording people without permission. Well, they were recording in New York, and it's not illegal in New York. For those unaware, I'm very familiar with this because I deal with it, and I record people a lot. I record a lot of people doing investigative work, journalism work, and I am very fortunate in that, Daniel, I live in a one-party consent state. You mentioned California. That's a two-party consent state, which means, or all-party consent state, which means in some states you can't record anything unless everybody in the recording is notified and agrees to be recorded. In other states like New York and mine, Pennsylvania, only one party to the recording has to consent. And when I do it, I'm consenting to record the call. And we have busted a lot of scammers, Daniel Foster, by recording them. And you know, do I use a little bit of deception to do that? Sure I do. But I think I do it ethically, and I buddy up to them. I try to build a rapport with them and put them at ease. And then I ask them questions that they would never answer if they knew they were being recorded. And then we broadcast some of that. So what's happening with O'Keefe, nobody really knows. He's going to talk about the list of grievances for why they didn't fire him. They removed him. They removed his power as CEO and then asked him not to contact anybody in the company or their financial donors. And he came into the office to give this speech and get his stuff and go. But he does say he's not quitting and he's not retiring. So I think he's going to wait to see what they're going to do. Like he's going to make them fire him or something like that. That's what I'm gathering.
Employees and board members' Twitter accounts also exploded like never before. Pfizer even put out a non-denial denial, like you always capture these things, where they basically admitted they were mutating the virus, albeit they buried this admission in jargon. But it was still an admission. And it was extraordinary that Pfizer responded to us with an admission, not denying that this guy was who he was. What an amazing turn of events. That is the only thing that's changed in 13 years of me being who I am.
I agree with you, James.
And then suddenly, an unusual emergency happened just a few days after that.
Yes, James, they have to.
We have one more person here, if we could let him in. So suddenly, an unusual, and I'm going to take you through this.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Fish. I do it.
Some of you don't know these things. Hello. We're talking about the story we broke. An unusual emergency happened on Thursday, February 2nd. That's a few days after the Pfizer story. I was informed by an officer of Project Veritas on the phone while en route to the airport
Glad to see you
that
here.
he would resign unless I step down as CEO. We've been having a conflict of visions, him and I, over fundraising. Are we in fundraising here? I guess no one from fundraising is here. I don't know. There were tactical disagreements about the boldness of approaches soliciting donations. I was told, and I'm paraphrasing, by asking for X dollars right now, you will prevent 10X dollars down the road. That advice ran contrary to everything I knew to be true in my 13 years of fundraising.
Yeah, I'm interested to see that board member's experience with fundraising. James O'Keefe has been the one making those decisions, and for 13 years, he almost doubled their revenue every year. Well, not every year, but we saw the chart. Many of the years, he just about doubled the amount of money that they took in sponsorships and the amount of money that was donated to them. And isn't it interesting that the board member is basically telling them, don't ask for a certain amount of money. You might be able to get 10 times that if you don't ask for a certain amount. So they're having a disagreement over, how to do the fundraising. And meanwhile, it has been James who has been in charge of almost doubling their revenue for many years during the past 13 years. I learned in business, if somebody's really good at something, don't question them. Just let them do it. If they're being very successful at something, let them do it. Let them do it. Get out of their way, right?
But that conflict was even more fundamental and essentially boiled down to this. And my vision, I'm going to paraphrase Howard Rourke, the architect, quote, I don't build in order to have donors. I have donors in order to build. That's what I believed, and I felt like we had a conflict.
And it's interesting that the board member he's talking about threatened to quit if he didn't step down as the CEO. Well, he's not just the CEO, he's the founder, and this really does strike me like Steve Jobs getting fired from Apple. It's the same kind of a thing. Like Steve Jobs built Apple and they stabbed him in the back and threw him out, right? And of course he got his revenge years later.
Like divisions. We don't measure our success only in terms of how much money we bring in. We measure our success in terms of our impact. Remember Acorn? I don't think I raised a single dollar off that. I had a stack of media coverage to the ceiling. We measure our success in terms of what we produce, not just in terms of our wallets.
Yeah,
that was a pretty fundamental conflict, I felt. The day prior, I didn't.
Yeah, I think it's important if you're passionate about what it is that your mission is. Like we are. I'm very passionate about what we do here. You can't go, well, I wasn't successful because I didn't raise X number of dollars this month. And, to be honest, I'm happy that we pay all of the show's bills and have a little bit of money for new equipment or whatever. I consider that the show's a total success,
Informed him in front of his colleagues that if he wasn't willing to follow my lead, he'd be shown the door. I tried to deal with it privately, but I was unsuccessful, and the disagreement boiled over publicly in a staff meeting. The next day, this individual refused to resign, so I fired him.
Whoa, see, that's what this is about. This is about a board member. And by the way, that board member got rehired after they did this to James.
Later that same day, that's Thursday, February 2nd, a few days after the 50 million viewed Pfizer videos, I was informed by a different officer of Project Veritas that he would go to the board in a few hours from that moment and have an emergency vote to restructure this company. Receiving an agenda in my email while I was sitting on an airplane tarmac with the doors closing, the meeting was scheduled for the moment that my plane landed in Nashville. It became clear to me in that moment I would be removed from my position at Project Veritas by the time I landed at my destination.
That's something else. And you know what else is something else? I wonder, I hope he gives some interviews about all of this and names and talks about like how he felt being stabbed in the back like this, because he probably was responsible for some of those people being hired and brought on board as high-ranking members of this organization.
I bet you didn't know that.
And by the way, one of the people who he fired or had the big disagreement with was I'm not sure if he was the CFO, the chief financial officer. James fired him. They hired him back.
I have a copy of the emergency meeting here for you guys to take a look at. It's in writing. You could read it. You don't have to be there. You can read the minutes. They're official board minutes. They're written by a lawyer. My first question on the phone to this guy, my colleague, as I was staring at this agenda when the stewardess was asking me to get off the phone, was, quote, "What are we going to tell our supporters if I'm removed from my position?" I think that's the first question. I had 100 questions, but that was the first one.
Yeah, and by the way, I've seen literally hundreds of tweets on Twitter of people saying, when I donated to Project Veritas, I was donating to James O'Keefe, and I want my money back. They're going to have a real problem here.
My colleague, who is an officer of Project Veritas, responded by saying our supporters wouldn't have to find out.
Oh, so they were going to keep his ousting from the people donating the money. That's slimy, and that's corrupt and shady.
Sounds like something you would get in the Claire McCaskill campaign. It sounds like something you'd expose. I was so shocked by this, and again, the stewardess was asking me to
think it was
get
the
off the
CFO.
phone.
Chief
I
Financial Officer.
guess you could say that I was in a state of complete shock.
For those that are a little ignorant of corporate structure or whatever, the two most powerful people in an organization like this, or any business really, is the CEO and the CFO. The CFO is the Chief Financial Officer. He's the one who controls all of the money and oversees all of the money. So in my experience in business, having worked for many different Fortune 500, well, not many, but a few Fortune 500 big corporations, the two most powerful people in those organizations were the CEO and the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer. And since I worked in finance, I've worked for several CFOs and controllers. So it'd be the controller was right under him. Usually I worked for the controller, who's one step below the CFO. But from what I saw, the CFOs I think they might have more power than the CEO, because they're the one holding all of the purse strings. And if somebody wants to spend money on something that he doesn't agree with, he can stamp him out or get rid of him if it's in the best his job. A CFO's job is to, be the controller of the money and to always do what's in the best financial interests of the company and shareholders. And that's where it gets dicey,
How would our supporters not be informed of such an enormous thing? It was a lapse in judgment so severe that it was itself a fireable offense to make a statement like that. It was a lapse in judgment so severe, it was impossible to hide my removal from my position.
It depends on how it's structured
to anybody. As the CEO and chief fundraiser, I have to explain the context of my role to thousands of people.
My pleasure.
300 days a year on the road, while soliciting them for funds so that I can
executive officer. He is the boss.
And I knew many of
CEO is chief executive officer. Usually he is the head of the board and the head of the entire company or organization. For example, I'm the CEO of my company. Even though my company is tiny, but I'm still the CEO on paper, Tasty Crayon. I'm the chief executive officer of a technology company and media company that produces this content that you're watching right now. I don't have a CFO, but yeah, it is usually the boss of the whole company. And very often the founder is also by de facto becomes the chief executive officer. And in my experience, look what happens when people step down from that role and give it to somebody else. The most famous case of that is Steve Jobs famously hired a CEO who was a former CEO of, I think, Coke or something like that. And he said, do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to change the world? Come with me. And he hired the guy who would eventually fire him. That's pretty interesting. So you got to be very careful if you're the founder of an organization. And I think Mr. O'Keefe here is probably rethinking some of his structure, because he had a role in designing the structure of the organization and how power plays out and who can make decisions. And he's probably regretting some of those decisions now.
Of our supporters,
because I'm sure if he had it all to do over again, he would remove these people's ability to castrate him or take away his power or take away his role as the leader of the organization.
Donors would not like that change.
Yeah, and so what he's talking about is that they wanted to not tell the people giving this organization money that they were removing the person that most people are donating to, the face of the Project Veritas, and the worldwide leader of that organization. They were just going to not tell the donors because that might affect their financial outlook. If people knew that they were removing him, people would stop donating, and I'm sure most people have stopped donating.
If I was removed from the chief decision maker at the organization I founded, I share who we are, our vision, our structure, our strategy with everybody. In fact, hiding something so fundamental from people is something that we stand against in principle, particularly with the amount of scrutiny that we're under. The doors closed, the plane took off, but somehow, over the next few hours, I was able to convince the board to push this emergency meeting to that Monday, February the 6th.
Yeah, at least let me attend the meeting where you're going to fire me. After all, I'm the one who's everybody's donating to and founded this organization.
The very next day, and this is where things gets really bizarre. So fasten your seatbelts. The very next day, on Friday, this is now Friday, February 3rd, a board member reached out to one of our journalists and stated, quote, "You get a raise if there is a restructure without James O'Keefe at Project Veritas." I have a copy of the text message, and I'll give it to all of you.
Wow.
I redacted the name of the journalist.
That's something else. So the people who are trying to get rid of James are going around telling people, if you vote with us, you're going to get a raise. So they're bribing people to get rid of the CEO and founder of the organization. I would consider that a bribe. You get a raise.
The board member deleted the message, but not before our journalist took screenshots. Good job, journalist. Yeah. On Sunday, February 5th, now that's Sunday, 2 days after the Friday, a board member requested my presence at his home.
Oh, that's great. Come to my house. Let's have a meeting.
He informed me, quote, "You had nothing to do, James, with this Pfizer story," unquote. Perplexed by this, I took out my iPad and showed him a video of myself confronting the Pfizer executive, which had 11 million views on YouTube.
Yeah, he
responded, quote, "But that was after the undercover video had already been done," unquote. I pointed out that the brave journalist, and many of you know who this person is, I'm not going to name anyone, who recorded the interaction was someone that I had to sit down over a year prior, remember, over dinner, for hours, talking off the proverbial ledge, insisting he take the long, arduous road to get the story about Pfizer. And indeed he did.
Now, that's an interesting thing from a content creator's perspective. So in order to get that story, they were planning it and working on it a year before the story broke. And I don't have any long games that long, but I will say this. Sometimes when we do one of those investigative stories, I've been at it for months before I broadcast it. It takes a tremendous amount of planning, time, investigatory work, research, background, planning. It's very difficult. And that's interesting. So they were planning and working on that Pfizer story for a year before it was broadcast, or before they, got the goods and broadcasted the story.
The board member responding to me saying that said he did not know that, and admitted that another board member was persuading him to the contrary.
Yep, damage control tactics. Yep.
In the meeting, we're fast forwarding to Monday, 2 weeks ago.
That's a lot. That's a
on the
lawsuit
6th,
right
I offered
there,
an apology letter to the board for my tone of voice in the office at the leadership meeting the week before. That I intended to also share that apology for my tone of voice with our staff. But the board refused to accept my apology, nor believe that it was sincere. They also did not support my sending it to the staff. I imagine many of you didn't even know that I drafted an apology. Then I was subject to a 6.5-hour listing of grievances, which included taking black cars to meetings. I don't know the significance of the color of the vehicle. And taking a few charter jets over the years to pack multiple PV meetings in a day. one of those jets. I think we had a meeting in New York, Wisconsin, and California in the same day, and it raised $2 million. But the revenue part was omitted.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There was also some
so they're accusing him of he wasted money on chartering a private jet. But if you charter a private jet for 25 grand for the day, but you raised $2 million for the organization, I would say that is money well spent. And anybody would agree with me. Anybody with a brain, right? Sometimes you really do have to spend money to make money. And if he had to do those meetings all in one day or whatever to get that donor money, I would say that was money well spent. It looked to me with this list of grievances like they were just cherry picking anything they could to make him look like a bad person or a bad leader or fiscally irresponsible. Yeah, I don't know.
Truly bizarre grievances, including my failure to record audio
this is definitely going to go to
court in upstate New York, and an allegation that I stole a pregnant woman's sandwich in federal court. There were also discussions from a few staffers with donors in the boardroom. Donors were listening to some of this.
This is how ridiculous it got. They accused him of stealing or taking a sandwich off of a pregnant woman. And, look, no matter if you hate this guy, do you really think that he's going to just walk up to a pregnant woman and steal her sandwich? Like, this is so ridiculous. He stole a sandwich from a pregnant woman? We're looking for reasons to vilify him, to make him look like a bad person, a bad leader, or whatever. I think this is all about greed. They all want to get into that money, and he was not going to let them waste money on anything other than his mission.
And some of these were sent directly to donors without my consent, donors who have no knowledge of my personal life and have no business asking questions about my personal life, about girls I've dated in the past. A fundraising colleague relayed, and again, this is going to start getting really strange, but this board meeting was video recorded. We'll get to that in a minute. A fundraising staffer relayed, quote, concerns about my behaviors regarding videos where I, quote, literally chased a Twitter executive around New York. By acclamation from all of you in 2022, that video about the Twitter chase was one of our most successful videos. But yet your colleagues in a boardroom were expressing concerns about it.
Somehow.
Every board member previously communicated their love of that video, but none pushed back in that moment when the staffer criticized it. Why? The attacks were so severe against me personally in that boardroom. And again, this is all video recorded, and I suggest that you ask for that. I will not provide that to you. The attacks were so severe.
Well, thank you, Julia.
That one board member asked, quote, is there anything James O'Keefe is good at?
Ooh.
That's what your board member said. Oh, and by the way, this meeting was video recorded. I'm going to keep saying that. You may want to ask existing board members if they want to share that entire video with you. I suggest you request the entire 7-hour or so video.
I wonder if the board members are standing off to his right and he is like really trolling them and they're standing off in the corner while he's giving this speech. That's interesting, though. That meeting where they were berating him and talking about his personal life and all of his sins for the past 13 years was recorded. That's going to leak.
To see for yourself what actually happened. You don't have to have been there. You simply need to watch the video and hear all of the testimony. After the 6 hours, I was asked what I had to say for myself.
They could have been.
I was given about 10 seconds to respond. And then I was dismissed.
Wouldn't surprise me, but I didn't see any evidence of that, to be honest, girl next door.
Then, and I'm reading from board minutes drafted by lawyers who are taking a record of what the board members said and did, a vote was called to strip me of all of my authority and decision-making at this organization.
I agree, space exposure. And thanks for being a member.
That's 180 days. Again, it's in the board minutes. You'll have a copy of it. It says, quote, the CEO's ability to make these decisions suspended for 180 days with such power transferred to the executive director. The executive director reports to the board. The CEO is placed on leave for 2 weeks. and the CEO's access to donors is restricted. So I can't talk to donors. I can't raise money. Let's see.
And they essentially replaced him as the person who runs the organization with the director, who was probably just under him, like a second in charge person. CEO is placed. Oh, he got placed on paid leave. I thought it was unpaid leave. So it's paid leave. Let me issue or offer that correction.
Okay. My first question before I was dismissed, I asked how the remaining team will manage the company and what the plan was. That's something you had essentially, what's the plan? But they didn't provide one. It was clear they didn't actually have one.
Yeah, they do have a plan. They just want to get rid of him, apparently.
And then I was dismissed. So I went off the grid as requested. Went hiking with Kennedy in the mountains. Within a few days of going off the grid, I started receiving missed calls and texts from the same board members and officers who demanded I be gone. They informed the staff that they're waiting to hear from me. I found that odd. There was a corporate resolution demanding that I be gone for 2 weeks. I was a little worried about violating the corporate resolution. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, they wanted him gone, and then once they got him gone and the story of him being ousted leaked, suddenly they wanted him back to talk to the staff members. That's slimy.
This was while I was commanded by a motion of a board to be literally gone on paid leave for 2 weeks. And then an officer at Project Veritas took a screenshot of my read receipts of text messages and distributed them to you, saying, quote, "You owe your team a response. Please allow communication." This was during the time when I was required by the board to be gone. Then, it's going to get stranger. Then, and again, I'm going to give you copies of all this. Then, on February 10th,
Yeah, I
you guys
think that
don't know what I'm
audio
about
thing
to
has
tell
been
you.
resolved, but thank you.
Another board meeting occurred. Again, I'm gone. With the meeting's minutes reflecting that they had indefinitely suspended me from the board. By this time, they had stripped me of all of my authority as CEO. During the time I was on leave, they kicked me off the board. So I can't be a CEO if I have no authority. I can't make any decisions. I'm not allowed to access any donor names.
Yeah, I would agree that they stripped him of all power and responsibility. So what is he supposed to? He's not the CEO. He's not able to make any decisions. They took his corporate credit card. They won't let him talk to the donors.
I wasn't even sure what my job was or if I even had a job. Right now, I actually don't. I'm not sure what my job here
Spilling
is.
the tea on the rats. You're right.
In the
from
board
Zach.
minutes,
He
it
sure
says
is.
that I no longer have a paycheck and I'm indefinitely suspended from this organization. 5 days later, after that, on February 15th, a statement was put out by this organization.
Yeah, so they gave him a 2-week suspension with pay, and then they suspended him indefinitely without pay. So they took his paycheck from him, and they took all responsibility away from him. So I agree with him. Then what's my job? You're not firing me, but I have no responsibilities and I have no paycheck?
By this organization's executive director saying, quote, "James has not been removed from Project Veritas." 5 days after they removed me from Project Veritas.
So they lied to the staff and they lied to the media. He's not been removed from Project Veritas. Well, technically, maybe that's true, but they removed his paycheck and all responsibilities. This is really, really, these people are slime balls.
James is the hardest working person I've ever met. Those who know him know he will not take time off unless forced to. Absent from the statement was the actions of the board to remove me from the board and remove me as CEO. I don't know why they omitted that part.
Because it makes them
Later
look
on the
like slime
15th,
balls.
the same day, while hiking with Kennedy, PV put a statement by quote tweeting a picture of me with him saying, "There is nothing better than enjoying a well-deserved vacation." That tweet failed to mention that by then I had been removed from the board and indefinitely suspended as CEO.
Wow, this is really slimy. So the board members or the people in charge after he was ousted of the Project Veritas Twitter account, They took a picture of him from his social media hiking from his friend Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., some interesting friend to have. James O'Keefe is alive and well. Why wouldn't he be? We're sure many of you can agree. There is nothing better than enjoying a well-deserved vacation. They're calling his suspension a vacation on their public Twitter account, and they retweeted it from his friend Robert F. Kennedy Jr. after they gave him a 2-week suspension with pay. They're calling that a vacation.
Why didn't they put that part in? This is where things get really messed up. A few days later, an officer sent an email to the board with bizarre hyperbole and innuendo about certain expenses related to our business needs. These included,
I agree,
you can't make this up, that Project Veritas paid for James O'Keefe's down payment of his wedding. I got a chuckle out of this. I'm not married. I've never been married. I do hope to get married one day. In fact, I got married to you in Oklahoma, but that was pretend.
So where did they get this from if he's never been married?
Everyone enjoyed it. We rented a charter bus. We all went down. Everyone enjoyed that musical, or at least I thought. I'm not married, but the truth of the expense, the $12,000, was that it was a payment for our annual Project Veritas Christmas party. Remember that? Where you guys were there? Some of you brought your spouses? The officer lied by omission, excluding the purpose of paying the $12,000 for the wedding venue. It looked like Project Veritas was reimbursing me for a wedding venue.
Wow.
Why would the officer lie like that?
Wow. So James O'Keefe paid $12,000 for the Christmas party to rent the venue or whatever, and they reimbursed him that expense. And they're claiming that they paid for his wedding. It wasn't a wedding. It was a wedding venue for a Christmas party. There's a lot of deception here on the part of these board members.
There were also, again, bizarre complaints, and this is where you come in, Asha, about taking too many trips to too many meetings over the course of a year. I think there were like...
Well, let's read this. There was approximately $155K spent on black cars for 305 trips between June 2021 and November 2022. Assuming Uber were used as an alternative with no waiting time, I estimate that cost to be approximately $15,000. So they're saying he spent more money on private cars and drivers. Then why didn't they at the time tell him to use Uber and not private car rentals, right? And by the way, I think that reference to black cars is a reference to limousines, right? So maybe he was renting limousines to ferry him around to meetings and stuff. Who knows? But $50 a ride, the net would be $140K.
305 cars I had taken to meetings and donors and journalism assignments, including all the, quote, black cars taken from airports to various meetings. I have a copy of that, so you don't have to take my word for it. The officer stated to the board, this is on February 13th this week, that we should do things such as, quote, reschedule meetings. And the IRS would prefer Zoom meetings over in-person meetings.
I don't know about that.
I'm going to let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah, that's fishy.
My lawyers got a real laugh out of that one.
Oh,
over the last couple of days.
He just mentioned lawyers.
And again, I have a copy of these. You can read them for yourselves. The wedding. There's a line item here. It omits the purpose of the expense. It was for a project. You were there. You were dressed in your amazing Christmas clothes. I remember it was beautiful. It was like a Christmas PJ blazer thing you had on.
That was that one.
You were there.
Yeah.
It wasn't a wedding. It wasn't a wedding.
Thanks for bringing the outfit.
It was a great outfit. I remember that was what I remember from that. And we sang "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning."
I'll give him the Christmas party is a nonsense issue, but I don't know about the car thing. Like, do they? Let me know what you think of the live chat. Do they have a point? Maybe he shouldn't be renting limousines all the time. He should just take an Uber. I think that's a valid point, but that's a point they could have raised with him privately. at some time. They gave this range of between June and November. For a full-on year, they let him spend that money on those cars. Why didn't they stop him at the first expense? That would be reasonable to say, hey, these private rental cars that you're using are very expensive. They usually, those rental cars come with a chauffeur or a driver. They'll take you wherever you want to go, but they are certainly much, much more expensive than an Uber would be. But why didn't they raise it to him? They let him spend it for a year or almost a year before they, found a problem with it. But that one I'd like to get more information on. But the wedding one is ridiculous. He rented a wedding venue for a Christmas party. That's very, very common.
It wasn't. I didn't get married. It was a Project Veritas Christmas party. Our Christmas party this year cost about twice as much. That one was about $12,000. Okay.
Corporate Christmas parties are very expensive, by the way. Me and my wife have been to a few while I was in, especially remember I mentioned I was a supervisor or I was a team leader in finance, and boy, did they spend money on their Christmas party. And not only did they spend money, it was kind of like one of those very, very expensive venues with a live band and entertainment, and they had ridiculous food everywhere, an open bar, and then they rented everybody a really, really nice hotel suite. So if you were at the party, they didn't want anybody driving home or driving drunk, so you just open bar, and then you got a room to go to, and you go home the next day. Some corporate places spend a lot more than 12 grand or 25 grand even on a Christmas party, depending on the size of the organization. But 12 grand for a Christmas party for a multi-million-dollar nonprofit organization seems very reasonable to me. So does 25,000, to be honest with you.
And I have the line item here that sent to the board about the black cars. Too many car trips. And by the way, Zoom meetings over in-person meetings is not how you raise money and not how you conduct your journalism.
Yeah,
it's hard to get the content over a screen.
I agree with him on that. Did you know, this is interesting, podcasts where the people are in the same room check it out. Look at Joe Rogan and many, many others, Timcast. There's so many podcasts where, like, how we do it over StreamYard or over Zoom. If we have a guest, he comes in virtually and it's both of us on a screen. But those podcasts that do in-person stuff, Lex Fridman and all these other bigger podcasts, they do better. People want to see you in the same room with the guest. It's better. That I'll agree with them on. And especially, what if you're asking donors for money? Where is that going to be more effective? On a Zoom call or in person? Like, go take the donor to lunch and tell them about your mission and what plans you have for the year and how they can help. Certainly, fundraising is much more effective in person. So I'll give them that one as well.
Ask our journalist if that works to produce a story. In fact, I would maybe ask you guys to ask these guys how you're supposed to do your jobs without taking, quote, black cars around. I don't know how I can do my job here.
Yeah.
If I can't transport myself.
Yeah, maybe they should just buy him like a skateboard or an electric scooter or something. It's kind of ridiculous. And I don't know, my only experience or, the lens I'm viewing this from is corporate America. I've worked for a bunch of multi-million-dollar organizations, and like every organization I've worked for, like, unless the CEO is really doing stupid financial things, and remember, I worked in finance, they just let him go. Like, I worked for one organization where the CEO got a company car every year, and the CEO wanted a $175,000 car. But it's it's in his contract that he gets a company car and he gets to pick whatever car he wants. This dude picked a $175,000 car Nobody blinked an eye in finance. That's what he gets. That guy is a multi-million-dollar asset to the organization. If he wants a $175,000 car, get it for him. And what's the guy going to do? Get a Kia for $10,000? Imagine if you had the right to just pick any car you wanted, and it's in your contract. Nobody blinked an eye. So I find this questioning of the CEO's spending to be very petty. And remember, the chief fundraiser for this organization is James O'Keefe, to the best of my knowledge. So he's the one bringing in all the money. I don't understand them questioning his spending. It doesn't seem to be outrageous to me if he spent whatever he spent, $150,000 on rental cars for the year. It looked like he raised $24 million for them this past year.
Around the United States. It actually doesn't make any actual sense, does it? None of this makes any sense.
Yeah, we have.
And why is it all happening right now? Those are the questions I have. I don't have answers.
Right after the Pfizer story, too, Solar Marshall. That's suspicious.
After this series of events, I wrote a letter to the board on February 16th with the proposal. Many of you have not seen this, but this is what I sent to them, which I guess they haven't shared this with you, but I'm going to share it with you now. With a proposal that the board members resign by the end of this past week.
Yeah, they had to really plot
We're now
this out.
past that point, or I'll be forced to walk away. And this is what I wrote.
Yeah, and by the way, I just want to give everybody a piece of advice. If you're ever put in a position like this where they're trying to force you to quit, don't quit. Do not ever quit, right? Make them fire you, because then you might have a lawsuit if they're doing shady, dirty things. But if you quit, they can just say, hey, we try to work it out. He chose to resign. I had an organization once ask me for a resignation. They said, I think it would be in all of our best interests if you just resign. And I said, well, okay. You mean it'd be in your best interest? I'm not resigning. If you want to fire me, I'll go clean out my desk. But I want a letter from you stating that you are terminating my employment, or I'm not moving, And it's funny, some of these corporate types are real pussies, man. They don't deal well with a real man. So in that situation, I did get fired, and they escorted me, or tried to escort me out of the building with security or something like that. And they wanted me to leave and not go back to my desk. And I said, no, I'm going back to my desk and I'm getting my personal belongings. And if you have a problem with it, you can try to physically remove me. But I walked in here like a man, and I'm walking out of here like a man, not like a bitch. And they just backed down, and I went and cleaned out my desk and I left. And by the way, that was the last corporate cubicle job I ever had. I walked out of there, and yeah, I got fired, but it was very interesting. I got fired. I think I got fired on a Monday. I think so. And by that Friday, I had filed all the paperwork. I had started my own business, and I bought a Corvette. I was like, I am not going to feel like a loser here. I did. And by the way, in that situation, I did nothing wrong. It's a long story, but it's interesting though, when that's a big hit, getting fired. That was a huge paycheck too, and a lot of security and benefits and everything. But I said, I am going to start my own business, and I'm going to buy a Corvette. And I did, and that's a weird thing, right? Like, you bought a Corvette, you just got fired. Like, and I'm like, yeah. And I started a business too. And it's interesting. It took a while. It did take a while, but several months after that firing, I was making the same money, and I was working for myself, and I wasn't miserable and hate my life and sit in a sad cubicle all day. I will never go back to corporate cubicle land.
Dear board, and I'm not going to provide the whole thing, but I'll provide the meat and potatoes. Over the last 2 weeks, I've carefully followed the board's directive to take a vacation and avoid contacting donors. Of course, donors called me. My phone was being lit up with thousands of phone calls. One donor even, I think, posted a video. She was upset about how she was portrayed in the grievances. Remmers was her name. She posted a video saying the grievance was a total lie.
That's great.
My understanding is one of the officers of this organization responded to that by calling the donor a liar.
That's great.
The officer wasn't there. Why would the officer call the woman with the sole authority on the matter who was there? Why would he call her a liar? I don't know the answer to that question. Your actions over the same period to undermine Veritas and its future, including airing confidential employment matters publicly, has broken trust. I cannot in good conscience return to such a mismanaged organization. I have not responded privately or publicly because there is no rational, appropriate response for the emotional circus that has been created by your actions.
And it's interesting. Essentially, he's saying that the board created a grievance from a donor who then corrected the record and said, "Oh, I don't have a grievance. They misconstrued things, or I don't have this. They manufactured this grievance." They called her a liar.
I expect the board to resign by the end of the week. Project Veritas, including any employees who choose to stay, will go on under my leadership with newly appointed professional board members and officers prepared to exercise their duty of care and duty of loyalty to the organization. That's what a board does.
Oh, that's very interesting. So they try to oust him. They suspended him for 2 weeks, and then they gave him an indefinite suspension, and he sent the board members a letter saying, "I expect you all to resign." So this is a definite power struggle within the organization. He's not just quitting. He's not quitting and going away like they want. He's telling them, "I expect you to resign. I'm not resigning."
They exercise duty of loyalty and duty of care. What they shouldn't do is try to destroy an organization. That's not what a board member does. I will return to work on Monday, that's today, and work with the remaining team to go forward with our mission. Short of this action, I cannot in good faith return to the employment of an organization with leaders who are attacking me personally, making false and unsupported claims of improper management of resources about weddings and black cars, improperly airing employment issues related to me and others at Project Veritas. I did not leak that document, and I would swear to it under oath. But it probably wasn't the best idea to march employees into a boardroom. That's never happened in any boardroom in the history of boardrooms. And that's one of the reasons why our donors are so upset.
Yeah, the donors are pissed.
That doesn't happen. Ruining our reputation in front of supporters and donors and leaking confidential information and fabricating stories. One of our ethical rules is we don't lie to our audience. I've never lied to our audience in 13 years.
That's a good ethical rule to have. And I try to do that. I should write that down. That'll be something that I could take from this. We do our very best not to lie or mislead the audience here.
But I was stripped of all decision making last week. And you guys put out a statement lying to your audience. And there's nothing I could do about it. Because I was stripped of all my decision making. I was removed from CEO. I was asked to be gone until the 20th. It is now the 20th. I asked the board to resign for their conduct, and they did not. So currently, I have no job at Project Veritas. I have no position here based upon what the board has done. So I'm announcing to you all that today on President's Day, I'm packing up my personal belongings.
That's interesting.
I don't really have much in this room that belongs to me. I guess a painting, a diploma, some personal things. It won't fill much. Maybe it'll fill my Kia.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm packing up my personal. I'm starting to get emotional. From headquarters, and I'm intending to start anew. I don't have the answers to why they've been doing this, or why board members were going directly to employees to collect grievances on the week of our biggest story ever. Or why our board members were going to employees directly to discuss removing me from this organization.
Or why they were bribing people, telling them they're going to get a raise if we could get rid of James O'Keefe.
Even saying, I'll give you a raise if James is removed. That might be illegal. I don't know.
Might be. Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, I'm no lawyer, but I think it's definitely illegal to try to bribe people for their votes to get rid of a CEO.
But why would they do it the week of our biggest story ever? But I'm confident that those reasons and motivations will come to light. To borrow an old expression, the public has a right to know.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a lawsuit. This guy is not going to just lay down and let these clowns do this to him.
Has happened here, and why there was a concerted effort to remove me from the organization I founded the same week of our biggest story ever had.
Yeah, and by the way, I think that the biggest story and them trying to get rid of him. I don't know. Some people are speculating that Pfizer had something to do with this, but it appears to me that these wheels were in motion, and it just so happens that they got lucky with a huge story right at the time that they started to put this plan into action. But that's just my take on it.
Almost done. This is very difficult. And I'm filming this for the staff. You know, sorry you couldn't be physically here, but this is for internal distribution. My dear team, I do love many of you. I never said it, those words, but I'll say it now. I want to go back to the beginning of what I said and express how important so many of you are to me. How I still believe we have a long and bright future together somehow, some way. And to share my profound appreciation for many of you. When I left the office, and this is where I'm going to get emotional, so please forgive me. When I left the office on February 6th, after being stripped of all my authority, I saw my father and gave him a hug, realizing just how honest and real of a man he is. Both my parents are as genuine and down to earth as a son could ever have. It's true, you never really know someone until you go through hell with them. You see, back in the carriage house 13 years ago, the feds would come to my home to make sure that I was inside my house, administering random drug tests and rifling through my expenses to make sure I wasn't lying about the strawberry ice cream I bought at 7-Eleven.
Wow,
I didn't have any money, but they went through my debit card statements and tried to get me to sign things to prove I wasn't lying. There were federal agents showing up at my parents' house. There were no donors. There were no supporters, and I was not trending on Twitter. My father went through this hell with me and stood up to those bullies on the front lawn and told them to stop harassing our family. And at that point, that's all I had, was him.
Wow, that's something else. That's a good father.
I was otherwise completely alone. I will never forget that. Now the good news, we're no longer alone. We have millions of Americans who also know who I am. In fact, sorry. In fact, you have, and we all have watched their overwhelming support. They see the truth. They know who I am. I also know many of you know who I am, and you know what's right, right? You know, you're people of principle here, people in this room, and this now may be your moment of truth.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did it again. I apologize. I'm curious to see how many of the people that work there are just going to quit and go with James if he starts a new organization. Or are they going to keep their mouth shut to keep their paycheck? But I don't think Project Veritas is going to be around much longer to give them a paycheck without James O'Keefe. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see. And then if he even wants any of them, to go with him or not. I'm sure he doesn't want any of the board members.
One of you called me from a closet the day of the 7th after I was suspended, the day after I was let go. and you were crying. I never heard that tone before. I told you it was going to be okay. You were afraid of what was happening here. You said, this is really hard. This is really hard to take. I can't take this anymore. I told you that I struggled alongside you, although I wasn't physically there. I told you that I loved you. A number of us told each other that we loved one another. It was the first time I've shared that sentiment with a colleague. It was a very real moment, a very beautiful moment, a touching moment where we were bound together.
Yeah, well, they were
many of us were really bound together.
They were all plotting to get rid of James. So the loyal employee to James went into a closet to call him and let him know what was going on. That's a loyal, employee
moment. And I was grateful for that. I recognize just how honest and real many of you are in your souls, that you are amazing people. We have some really amazing people Andy. Here, with men with brass balls and women with the courage of a lion. And it really, what I drew from this experience is the gratitude that I have, for so many of you. And as I was going through this horrible pain where I lost 8 pounds and couldn't sleep for 5 days, I was actually overcome with this amazing gratitude. True story. I was really feeling it, and I'm grateful for that, because I've experienced something I never have, because I saw the goodness in many of you that I did not previously see.
That's interesting. And yes, Andy, I sort of addressed those things in the beginning of the show. I talked about how he is definitely left-leaning, but he's done things like reveal that he's right-leaning. He's certainly conservative, right-wing agenda, maybe. But I think that's okay, because we have a majorly, at least in this country, Andy, the media is skewed to left. And he did some exposés proving that, like, CNN was manipulating the news to be more favorable to the left and to vilify the right. And he exposed that. There has to be some balance. Majorly, I don't know how it is in England, Andy, but majorly the media is left or liberal leaning, but by far, like 90% of American media is liberal or left leaning. So he's certainly right leaning and conservative, but he's vastly outnumbered, if you ask me, and I think he's sort of the equalizer, or I think it's fair. If you're going to have so many left-leaning liberal people, you should have some right-wing or right-leaning conservative people as well, putting their slant. It's a shame that we just don't have media. I would much prefer there's no slant to the news. Not left, not right. Just tell me the facts. Tell me the news. But unfortunately, in this country, we have Fox News that is conservative, but most of the media outlets besides Fox News and maybe Veritas and a few other renegade sort of indie organizations, every media outlet, MSNBC, CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, they're all left-leaning. So, I don't take away anything from him for being right-leaning, because most of our media is left-leaning. So, yeah, but it's certainly, and yes, I talked about how there's a lot of controversy with their methods, and people have accused them of selectively editing things, and yeah.
So I amend the statement that I made in the beginning of this. The statement I made before was Veritas will never be defeated from the outside. It will only be defeated from the inside. That's actually not true. No, the only way to defeat us is if they take our spirit. And from the looks of things, many of us remain completely undefeated and unbroken. So our mission continues on. I'm not done. The mission will perhaps take on a new name, and it may be no longer called Veritas, so Project Veritas. I'll need a bunch of people around me, and I'll make sure you know how to find me.
Well, that's interesting.
So
we're sort of inviting them to come with him.
When you invited me to New York City and did that little stand-up, how fitting that from Shakespeare, quote, "And this story shall the good man teach his son. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers and sisters." So with that, I'm going to collect my things. I'm going to load them into my car. And I hope to see some of you soon. That's it.
That's very, very interesting. So he's inviting the loyal to join him. And I just don't understand. I do not understand this board members' decision-making process. Let me know. What do you think? We'll take comments and questions from the live chat. Is Project Veritas going to survive without their founder that they're throwing out, in the street here? Do you think there's going to be? I think there's going to be a lot of lawsuits over this. James is very lawyered, and he has great lawyers, expensive lawyers, but he's got great lawyers. I think there's going to be an awful lot of lawsuits, especially because he can prove that they were bribing people to vote. Remember, I think it came down to some sort of a vote, and they had to have some sort of, democratic process to do this to him. And they had to have a certain percentage. I don't know if it's 60% or 7. I think he might have mentioned, or I saw in some of the paperwork, it's 70% of everybody has to agree to oust to get to do this to him. But if they're bribing people in the organization to get them to vote with them by saying you'll get a raise if we get rid of James O'Keefe, that's probably illegal. I'm not a lawyer, though. I'm not a law enforcement officer. So, ask an expert. And also, I think that they're going to have an extremely hard time raising funds after this. In fact, there's people all over Twitter that I have seen that are requesting that they get their money back, right? This is an interesting story, and there's an article from Vanity Fair. Let me share my. Oh, wait a minute. That's see if they're gonna. One second, I'll share my screen and we'll read a little bit of this article. This is James. Article is James O'Keefe accused of leading like a power-drunk tyrant. The board has insisted it did not fire O'Keefe, nor did we want him to resign, and it appears willing to make amends. We would like to continue conversations with James to resolve internal matters rather than litigate them publicly, the statement read. I have not resigned from the company. I was stripped of my position of CEO and chairman, said James O'Keefe. Still, the board insisted it did not fire O'Keefe, right? O'Keefe's sudden departure comes weeks after 16 Project Veritas employees signed a memo to the board accusing O'Keefe of managing like a, quote, power-drunk tyrant, unquote, claiming that he bullied and demeaned his staff. One employee even alleged that he once took a pregnant woman's lunch. According to the Daily Beast, O'Keefe did not respond to the Daily Beast's request for comment. Over the last 2 years, the group has suffered a spat of legal problems stemming from its procurement of a stolen diary kept by first daughter Ashley Biden. Oh, I forgot all about that. They got a diary from Ashley Biden, and then they got raided by the feds for having that diary. Boy, would I like to know what was in it. According to, well, we don't even want to get into that, but there were some accusations in that diary by Ashley Biden about now President Joe Biden. And they were very, very serious accusations. I wonder whatever happened to that diary, because that turned into a whole thing. The group has never published the contents of the diary and has faced no charges in the case. O'Keefe's home was searched by FBI agents as part of the 2021 investigation into its theft. The diary, which was stolen by 2 Florida residents who have pleaded guilty to the crime, was ultimately turned over to law enforcement. Meanwhile, in a separate case last year, a federal jury awarded Democracy Partners $120,000 after it ruled that Project Veritas had violated wiretapping laws in undercover videos targeting the Democratic consulting firm. Well, that's interesting. So yeah, they did go too far in at least one case, because this Democracy Partners got a $120,000 ruling that they violated wiretapping laws, and that has to do with recording phone calls or conversations. It's always best to be very, very careful when doing that. I live in a one-party consent state, so I don't worry about that too much, and I record whatever I want during an investigation, and I'm free to broadcast it as well. Completely and totally legal for me. In some states, not so much, right? I'm not expecting my money back. I just want to apply pressure and let them know they lost my support and why. Yeah, I would say reach out to them, communicate to them, let them know that you're not happy. Tell them you want your money back. A lot of people are telling them they want their money back. The big guy Biden, yes. Oh boy, would I love to know what was in that diary, because the feds came down like a hammer on anybody that had that in their possession or copies of it or whatever. But to the best of my knowledge and recollection, O'Keefe and Project Veritas cooperated. They gave up whatever information that they have, and they weren't charged. So if they did anything wrong in that case, they would have been charged. Yeah, he crossed the Biden cartel. Co-N says, True Seeker is on. Isn't it like 4 a.m. there? Yes, it is. This is our new insomnia series. I've been having terrible insomnia, and I just decided if I'm going to not be able to sleep, I'll get a couple of extra shows in. So, and also, we wanted to do a few shows at 4 a.m. here for the benefit of people in Australia and England. And while we do have people listening from all over the world, the most people listening from other countries to us is England and London, or excuse me, England and Australia. And those are both English-speaking countries. And many people have said, oh, Stephen, I love your show, but I can never catch it live because when it's 9 there, it's 4 a.m. here or something. So we're doing this so it's more reasonable time for the people in London and I keep saying London, in England and in Australia, Tasmania, and all those around Australia to catch a live show. We'll be doing this until the insomnia situation improves. I have some 10, count them, 10, what I call bonus or extra shows that are sort of off topic, and I never get to them because they're sort of off topic. So we're going to start doing them. And if my insomnia improves, we're going to start doing like 11 a.m. or 12 noon shows Eastern time. Again, for the benefit of those across the pond, we want to give everybody an opportunity to catch a live show. And I realize if 9 p.m. Eastern time is 4 a.m. your time, if in your home country, you're going to have difficulty being in the live chat, right? Oh, I didn't know it's your birthday. Pragmagic says, thanks for the Project Veritas birthday stream. I know you did it just for me, buddy. Real appreciate it. Well, listen, I knew it was your birthday. I knew that it was your birthday. I don't think he believes me. Listen, I knew it was your birthday, Pragmagic. And I was just talking to my cat, and I told him it was your birthday. I tried to get him to sing happy birthday, and he started yelling at me. I don't know if you know, but I got this talking cat. So anyway, happy birthday, Pragmagic.
What? Oh, it's your birthday again. Yeah, so what am I supposed to do here? Am I supposed to sing happy birthday to you every time it's your birthday? All right, fine, this is it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. All right? God. Can a cat just get some sleep around here?
Happy birthday, my friend Pragmagic. And Pragmagic, I someday we have to catch up, and I want to know how you're doing on that land and building stuff. And did you even get started? I'm getting started at my new place, maybe 2 more months, 60 more days, and I'm building a new place, a new cabin in the woods. It's going to be glorious. Your cat rules. We have a tea date. Yeah. Well, happy birthday, buddy. I hope you have a great one. Tell your girlfriend to bang you, you know? You know what I like about birthdays? It's like mandatory you're getting banged day. It's your birthday. She's got to do it, right? happy fun time, right? It's my birthday. Look at those eyes. Yes. And Deb from Sac says she is enjoying this time for a change. Yeah. It's great to catch you live from the Great Britain, UK. Great. That was the purpose. I figured so many of you have asked me to do shows either in England or in Australia, right? And I guess Troubled Minds, Mike, he's got insomnia too, right? And by the way, Mike, I thought I was going to email you, but since you're here, you and I should talk off air, because I thought if we trade notes, that would be good for both of us, right? I'm sure there's some things you learned along the way. Maybe you can help me with my audio podcast, and in exchange, I'll help you with your YouTube channel, and we'll both grow our respective, I don't want to say problems, but we both have our strengths and weaknesses. And also, I wanted to ask you some stuff off air about the AI stuff that you're using, because I'm going to go all balls deep in that. Co-in says, when are you going to cover Access Consciousness and their money scam channel BS? Crazy what people are spending on that nonsense. Well, it's on my list. That's what I could tell you. And I apologize, one-man army here. And Co-N, what I will tell you is the same thing I tell everybody. I appreciate that people want me to cover certain things, but the problem is I'm a one-man army here, and these investigative pieces like you're asking me to do here could take 1 month, and I've got 10 ahead of that, but that is on my list. I promise you it is on my list, and when I can get to it, I will get to it. I'm trying to, I guess you could say I'm trying to minimize other things that are time problems for me, right? And get a bunch of stuff off my to-do list so that I have more time every week I enjoy the investigative stories the best. The problem is, if I only did that, we would have one show a month here, So we have to do some commentary shows or some interview shows. In a perfect world, I would have a full staff doing, all of the investigative work, right? Oh, cool. I already sent you an email with some deets, but for sure. Yeah. I go to a cabin every weekend, Troubled Minds, and I have a little bit of downtime. And so I'd be happy to StreamYard or Zoom or Skype or whatever from there, or just phone call. I'll give you my cell phone number. But we should, I think it's a good idea to try to help each other. And there's things that I'm sure that I can help you with. Or I think I can. I can try, right? Yeah. I just think it's interesting that you're so much bigger on the audio side, and I was ready to stop doing mine until somebody helped me. I was doing it totally wrong, Mike. I was using the same thumbnail for every show. Just that change alone, and suddenly the audio podcast is making money, right? I just thought nobody cares about the thumbnail. They care about the content. No, the thumbnail gets them to listen, to click on it, right? Yeah. And it's interesting. I want to show you my audio podcast stats too, because I don't know what I did, but on some of those days, there's like 10 times or 5 times at least the average day's engagement. And I try to look, what were those shows? Where did I post them? It's the same sort of I don't know how that happened, but I'd like to make it happen every day, Just don't ask Steven to help you with your 3D printer. Those are the bane of my existence. I hate them. In fact, Arlene, my neighbor, who's taken several months trying to fix that thing after Ron didn't fix it. And by the way, for those unaware, Ron and a couple of other people in my life kept telling me, oh, you got to get a 3D printer, Steven. And I kept saying, no, I don't want one. They're nothing but aggravation. No. They all assured me. This thing hasn't worked right for a year since I got it. And so everybody thinks they could fix it, and I'm just stupid and don't know how to run it. And then they try to fix it, and they can't. My neighbor wants me to take it back to him and send it back to the company because apparently the one that I have has some sort of manufacturer's defect. So I want to throw it in the trash and just never 3D print something again, right? Co-N says, access consciousness is a whole other level of money that people are throwing at something. Ex-Scientologist started it years ago and claims he was channeling Rasputin or some alien to get the info. I know I've looked into it, but not deeply enough to do a show on it yet, right? If only you could 3D print me a new birthday cat. Well, I could if the thing worked. It never worked right. So where I'm at with 3D printing is I want to take the 3D printer that I wasted like $500 on. And by the way, that is a big expense for me. I am so cheap that to get me to spend $500 on something like that, that was like a once in a 3 or 4 or 5 year splurge on myself. It never worked right since I got it. I just want to throw it in the trash and not continue to aggravate everybody's like, oh no, send it back to the company or get this part and replace this part. We've been doing that for a year. The thing's never worked right. I don't want to aggravate myself any further. I want to throw it in the trash and just be free of the aggravation that I didn't want from 3D printers to start with. I said, I don't want one. They're nothing but aggravation. I told everybody they're nothing but aggravation. This thing's just going to aggravate me. It's not going to work right, or it's going to need parts replaced. Everybody, all my nerd friends. Oh, no, they're much different now, Stephen. They really worked out the bugs. They all work great now. No, they don't. It's just a big pile of aggravation I don't need in my life. I have 2 children. I don't have the patience for aggravation on the level of a child, right? That needs that kind of time and attention, and no. So I'm going to take it back from my neighbor. The only thing I will say is if the company who sold it to me will honor the purchase and give me a different model, maybe I'll try again, but not with that one. Yep, that's the thing, Mark Tarana. Mark Tarana says, my son's 3D printers work well. He's done many modifications to it. I agree, but he's had to work on it for like a year to get it to work good for him. And I did that, and mine still doesn't work good or work right. It chokes on bigger prints. Of course, I did buy a really, considerably bigger than a starter one, 18-inch. It can print 18 inches wide and 18 inches high and 18 inches long. So that's a pretty big 3D printer. It's just too much. It's too much. Little sledgehammer session, says girl next door. Absolutely. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for to take a hammer to it, break it all up and put it in a trash bag and never worry about 3D printing again. If I really want to print something, I have friends that all have them. I can send a file and say, hey, can you print this for me? I'll give you some printer filament, or I'll buy you, dinner or something. And that's much less aggravating than have to constantly tinker with the thing, replace parts, level it again, move it. Oh, somebody told me, oh, it's the temperature in your room is not right. Put it in a different room. I did that. Oh, now I moved it. Now I got to spend an hour auto leveling it, and then the auto level is only so good, so then you have to manually level it after you're done. And like, this thing has been nothing but aggravation. Am I selling it? No, I'm throwing it in the trash. You want it? I'll ship it to you. Pragmagic, it's your birthday. Happy birthday, Pragmagic. My good friend. I was just saying yesterday or the day before somebody had a birthday and we did the birthday shout outs. Like, enjoy it, Pragmagic, because we never know how many we have, right? Like, how many more do you have left? Probably more than me. But you never know, right? Life could be short, and enjoy the time that you're given. Every birthday is a celebration. Of course, it is also a little depressing. That means you're 1 year closer to the grave every year. But I guess it's all in how you look at it, right? Pragmatic. Project Veritas and James O'Keefe were targeted by the pharmaceutical companies for their destruction because they bravely reported the truth. Pfizer is involved in gain of function. Oh, yeah, maybe. Allegedly, Elise Diavalon. Allegedly. Yeah. Yes, I did, Mark Tarana. That was one of the other things that somebody said you got to do. So I bought one of those for $99, and that didn't change anything. So, and by the way, Mark Tarana, it's not just that suggestion. Then somebody suggested replacing the filament with different filaments. So I bought different filament. Then somebody suggested, no, you got to replace the printer nozzle. So I replaced that. Then somebody said that I have to replace some other part, some sensor. So we replaced that. We've replaced like 8 parts on this thing, I think. And nothing has fixed it. It still doesn't work right. It's just a whole bunch of aggravation. I hate it. Right? Solar Marshall says, I wonder if James was into something we haven't heard about yet. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. Trouble Mind says, and now the channel is banned. No, AI algorithm god, that was some crazy lady in the live chat. I didn't read it. I didn't mean to read it. I'm sorry. AI algorithm god's going to strike us down, Mike from Troubled Minds, right? And no, I'm just teasing you, Elise Diavalon. I don't think you're crazy. Well, you may be crazy. I mean, I don't know you that well, right? All women, by definition, are a certain spectrum of crazy, right? The key to being married for a long time is you just got to find the one that has the amount or level of crazy you can live with and just go with her. That's how it worked for me. I mean, maybe you should buy it flowers and talk sweet to it. Yeah, I mean, I was willing to try anything to get it to work. It was so frustrating that it never worked right. I mean, it would print little stuff, but every time I tried to print the big stuff, and why did I spend so much money on a big one if all it can do is print stuff that I could have bought a printer for $125 that printed the small stuff that it would print. I bought it so I could print real big stuff, and it wouldn't print the big stuff ever. Solar Marshall, what about the disaster in Ohio? We covered that. Go check our live videos. It's there. We covered that. We did a whole story on it, Solar Marshall. That was something else. I agree with something else. The disaster in Ohio is getting worse and worse by the day. I agree. We're going to do an update to that story next week. I have a witness that lives there on the ground, might join us as a guest. People's dogs are dying, and people are getting sick. They're covering it. They're I don't want to say that. They're not. They don't want people talking about that, and they, right? With James, yeah. Well. Yeah, I did cover that this week, and we'll be covering it. We'll be doing an update about that. Well, I'll put it on my list, Milky Way Mark. I heard about that, but I haven't really dug into that too much, right? Yeah, Pragmagic, that disaster in Ohio, people's dogs, their cats, if people have chickens in their backyard chickens, they're all dying. There's fish dying in all the creeks and streams all around there. I can't believe they only evacuated 1 square mile of people, and then they burnt that noxious cancer-causing chemicals, right? If he may have something there, I don't know. I don't know. James is digging out his old pimp coat from his Acorn days now, poor guy. Yeah, I feel bad for him, especially when he started kind of getting emotional at the end. But imagine how emotional that is. You started this organization. You turned it into a multi-million-dollar world-famous news organization. And then the people you brought on to run the organization with you got greedy and tried to get rid of you right when you had your most successful story ever. This is a crazy story, and the only thing I can relate it to, it's like Apple. It's like Steve Jobs getting fired from Apple. They were terrible without him. And then eventually they begged him to come back, and he got his revenge because he made hundreds of millions of dollars. They were forced to buy Next Computer in order to get his operating system. And the Next operating system turned into Apple OS X. And it's funny, there's still some things in OS X that you could see came directly from Next. They didn't fully stripped all of the next parts of the operating system. But he got his revenge, and I think James O'Keefe is going to get his, because I really don't think that they're going to survive without him. That's why now they're backpedaling and trying to get him to come to some sort of negotiations or something like that. And I'm going to try to share this. Yeah, they were at, I think the last time I looked at this, they were at like 1.5 million Twitter followers. Now we can see there is an effort underway. People are saying on Twitter, unfollow them, and you can follow their live Twitter follower count. And it really looks like people are jumping off in record numbers. I think this was it might have been at 1.8 million or 1.6 million, I think. I'm not sure exactly what it was at, but they've lost hundreds of thousands. I mean, before this story dropped. Oh, look at that. It's going up and back down. I don't know. They have lost hundreds of thousands of Twitter followers on Twitter, and I believe on YouTube and everything else as well. I'm going to try to find their Project Veritas. I'm going to let me try to find their YouTube, because that'll give us a little more insight into that. Oh, I'm not going to be able to find it. I think you have to do underscore or something. Trying to find their YouTube, because then we can look at like historically. No, I can't find it. Oh, there it is. Project Veritas. Wow. Here, this will show the story a little better. Let's share this tab instead. They are down 60,000 subscribers on YouTube in the last 30 days. Interesting. Wow, look at this. See here, we can see the effect. This is probably the 16th. That's probably right around the time the story dropped that this was going on. Minus 10,000, minus 40,000, 40,000, 10,000, minus 2,000, minus. Last 30 days, they're down 60,000 YouTube subscribers. So people are voting with their social media. They're saying, we will not support you without James O'Keefe. And they are unsubscribing and unfollowing. And as well as I think people should. It looks pretty slimy what's going on. So Bobby Broadway, so good to see you tonight, Mike. Yeah, I agree too. It felt a little surreal to me though, because it's like meeting somebody from TV or something. I've watched him so many times and listened to him so many times. And then talking to him in person, it felt a little weird. But I'm glad we did it finally. Thanks for doing that, Mike. That was fun. Uh-oh. There's a fire at a uranium plant 20 miles away and already having weird coughing, and the news is flat out lying about it. That's great. That wasn't my best. Brain fog happens, but we'll make it. No, you were fine. Well, I owe you a guest spot. I'm going to come on your show. And by the way, Trouble Minds, it's 4 a.m. here. Tomorrow, 4:30 almost. Tomorrow, I'm going to post on my Google Drive. I'll send you the links to the audio and video of the show. Yeah, it was weird because you've watched me too. So it's a little surreal. It's like, oh, they're a real person, right? And I can interact with them. This is weird. Instead of just watching them or listening to them, you're not just watching the show, you're a part of it now. It was a little weird, but good weird. I'm glad we did it. Yeah, I am going to. So we did our due diligence. We have done 2 shows today. Well, really, one was after midnight. So, well, we will end up doing 2 shows today. I'll be back at 9 p.m. Eastern time tonight, and I hope you'll be here with us. Got a really fun show planned. I think we're going to do sort of a challenge to Dr. Stephen Greer. Because he did a recent interview where he lied through his teeth through the whole thing. And I can prove a lot of that. So we'll probably be talking about that. And I will be back 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. And I hope you'll be here with me. I want to thank all of you kind and generous benefactors. I'm going to check in. I don't think we had any, but I'm going to check in with the PayPal just in case. We've already read all the super chats. Thank you for your kindness, generosity, and support. I'll check in with them, though, just to make sure. Once in a while, I miss one, but I think I got them all. We'll check in with the PayPal as well. We read every single super chat or PayPal pledge during the live shows, and we also call you out and thank you if you become a YouTube member during the live shows. Let me just check in with the super chats to make sure that we got them all, but I believe that we did. And this was good because I wasn't sure anybody would be here at this late at night, but I was hopeful that this would work. And we got great viewership for a show that started at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's for sure. Not great compared to our usual slot, but I'm just glad there was an audience. Thank you for being a part of it. Yeah, I believe that we got them all. Did we? Yes, we did. Okay, we're good. So we're good to go. Maybe the cure to insomnia is to just exhaust yourself, because I've been video editing all day and all night. And then I did the show at 9 with Mike, and then I video edited for a few hours. And then we did this show at 2 a.m. I think I'm actually going to be able to sleep. So thank you. And I'm glad you could all be here for my first insomnia stream. Hopefully we won't have too many of these before I fix my sleep schedule and start doing 11 a.m. or 12 noon shows. Get up a little early, go to bed a little early. But I'm sure Mike can agree with me. There's a lot of adrenaline with doing the live show. So after a live show, it's really hard for me to just suddenly go to sleep. Like, I can't finish a show and just go right to bed. That just doesn't work. Your mind's still spinning from what you just did or went through with the show. And I don't know. I'm going to have to, and then the other issue is that I was on some sleep medication that I ran out of and haven't been back to the doctor. And boy, we tried everything. I tried like 4 or 5 different medicines. Didn't really help. One of them did, but I thought it was too strong and made me groggy the next day, so I didn't want to take it. I don't know. I'm going to try, I don't know, warm milk, hot cocoa. I don't know. Yeah. But this was a successful first insomnia stream. I'm glad that you could all be here with me. This went very well. I'm very pleased that so many people showed up, and I want to thank each and every one of you for being a part of it. Maybe we'll do this more often, right? And we'll get a schedule, right? I don't know. Oh, I really got to fix my sleep schedule, but I'm glad that you could be here with me to share my insomnia. It's nice to know I'm not the only crazy person still awake at 4:30 in the morning. Yeah, good to have you all here with me. We want to thank our kind and generous benefactors, you Patreon supporters, you PayPal pledgers, you channel members, you Twitch subscribers, you super chatters, super sticker purchasers, super thanks people, and all of you for your support of the show. And remember, there's other ways that you can support us, like liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing these videos. It really does help. And the other thing is, I would ask you to watch one more show. We had a lot of new people today because this is not a normal subject we would cover, and people jumped in to see what we had to share about this story. If you enjoyed tonight, please do subscribe and come back and just give us one more show. Give us one more show, or check out our channel here and listen or watch one more show. And you can find our podcast on all available podcast networks. Anywhere pods are cast, you can listen. And check out our website. It's truthseekershow.com. One truth seeker, and then the word show, but all one word, truthseekershow.com. The link to that is in the description of the video. You can get all of our audio podcasts, all of our videos, all in one place. And we want to thank you, Rumble people, too. Our Rumble is really taking off. It's nice to see so many new friends. So shout out to you, Rumble viewers. I'm glad that you could be here with us. So glad that we started that and it's going great. And thanks for being here, you guys as well. And we want to thank our chat room moderators, our announcer, Ian, our wonderful graphic artist, Spooky, and all of you for being here. I'm going to go try to sleep. I think it's going to work. I think so. We'll try it. We'll see what happens. So that's all I got for you, friends. Until next time, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you.